Hello friends, this is Vishakha Daga coming up with next round of Editorial Explained. Now, whenever you think of India, the word that comes to your mind is one of the largest democracy. To the extent that whenever election take place in India, researchers all around the world come here in order to view the largest election. But does democracy only means election? Doesn't it mean more participation of people? So, in order to successfully implement the idea of participatory democracy, we are coming with new initiative like pre-legislative consultative policy. In this video, we will discuss this only. And through this lens, we will also discuss what is the difference between direct and indirect democracy. So let's just understand them one by one. Because an editorial came into The Hindu that is need for the proper pre-legislative consultative policy, we will analyze this topic through this editorial. Okay, now before we go to the entire topic whether PLCP is needed or not, first we need to understand the idea of democracy. What does democracy means? Now, whenever you think of democracy, the idea that comes to your head is government by the people, for the people, of the people. In short, it means the decision-making power should be with people. It is the people who should decide what government should do. It should integrate their needs, their demand, and all the goals of the life. So this is what democracy means. Now, need as actual decision making power should be should be with people. This is achieved by two means. Number one, what if a law is made in country? If law is made in country and the people are directly deciding whether a law should be made by them or not, this is called direct democracy. An example is Switzerland. In Switzerland, if a law is to be made, it is put in public domain directly. Now, public, if 50% of the people agree that it should be made law, then a draft law automatically become a legislation of the country. Draft law automatically become the legislation of the country. However, in case of India, now this is what is happening here. The decision making is directly given to the people. In case of India, this does not happen. Now, in case of India, if a law is to be made, now then actually this is made by the parliament. Parliament makes a law. However, the parliament have representative of the people. People elect who is going to be the member of parliament. And thus, decisions are making by the MP on behalf of people. So this is called indirect or representative democracy. That means in this, people are not taking decision, MPs are taking decision on behalf of people, and we do not question the integrity of MP because it is who we have elected them. However, the main aim of democracy was to make it as participative as it can be. And sometimes democracy is not that participative. Like a law is being passed by the parliament, but people protest against it. And it is being seen during CAA, RTI changes were made, and farm laws were made. We see huge amount of protest. This shows one thing that laws were made against the wishes of the people, and larger part of society was actually conducting a protest against it. That means if laws to be made, people's participation need to be ensured. Especially, it need to ensure that different stakeholder who are going to be impacted by it need to be on the decision making table. And that's why, in order to make the lawmaking process more participative, pre-legislative consultative policy was actually recommended by the two bodies. First is National Commission for the Review of the Working of the Constitution, 2002, and the National Advisory Council of the 2013. Finally, it became the reality in 2014. Now, what is PLCP? It says that if you're thinking of making a law, make a draft law, right? Now, this draft law has to be put in public domain. Now, put it in public domain. People can't make a law, but at least they can make recommendations. Like now, they can recommend the changes that can be made to it. They can say, okay, make these changes not. Before you're introducing it into the parliament, so before you introduce a law into the parliament, at least 30 days before, introduce it into the public domain so you can have their suggestions and recommendation. This is called pre-legislative consultative policy. That means before legislation, consulting the people. Okay. And report also says, since you're dealing with people and different type of stakeholders, some will be expert and some will be not. But law need to be understood by everyone. So this actually policy that came into 2014 gave few guidelines. Number one, 30 days before it is put into parliament, it should be in public domain. Second, while you're putting a draft law in public domain, there has to be simple note attached with it, which explains the need of the law and the provision of the law in more simple manner. Because this is the biggest the criticism against the constitution, that it cannot be understood by common people. However, this says please make it as simple as possible, the needs of the law and the provisions of the law, so that a common person can explain and can actually understand and give suggestions regarding this. This is a very good and forward looking actually concept of the PLCP. Now it then says the third requirement of the PLCP is, once people have given recommendations, these recommendations should not go futile, right? They should not go like of no use at all. Now, these recommendations need to be actually taken by the ministry of the respective department and need to be attached to the summary of the law. So, whatever draft law you have, after people have given consultation, in the summary, add the recommendation that are given by the people. So, these were the three guidelines that are given in the PLCP of the 2014. That is, before 30 days, put in public domain, give a very simple justification and the explanation of the law, and respective department should collect the recommendation and put it in summary of the draft law. So this is actually understanding PLCP. Now let's move ahead, understand why this is necessary. Now three most important needs can be identified in here. Number one, citizen are the biggest stakeholder, and there are different kind of stakeholder. Per se, if you're passing a trade law in here, now trade law had like different stakeholder which have different interests, like government, then they are industrialists, and then they are trade unions. Now, industrialists want the law to be in their favor. They need trade. The law should be more flexible. There can be more loopholes. We don't want more restrictions on us as much as like we want freedom. However, trade unions want more restriction, more social security, more benefit to them. They want industrialists should take more responsibility. Industrials don't want to take responsibility. Now, they're different interest. Now, government have to balance these two interests. So if law is put in public domain, two different parties can come together and they can negotiate, and a negotiated version can be taken by the government. Now what it does is, it reduces the possibility of conflict of interest later on and the protest that can happen later. So it is giving a chance to these parties to negotiate on their behalf, and the government can be a mediator. So there will not be a post-legislative protest which is being seen in India. An example is farmers' law, right? Transgender person law, they were not consulted enough. So different stakeholders need to be consulted before you're making a law, which will actually make the process participative, at same point of time reduce the possibility of post legislation conflict, right? Second, understanding that the consultation process make process more transparent and accountable. Obviously, it is making democracy more participative. It is making the process more transparent and increasing the accountability of the government, because the people are holding them accountable at the law making process itself, right? What if government decide to make a law which will make MP go free? But if consultative process is there, people will not agree to it. So it will make process more transparent and accountable. Like RTI itself, people were not happy when the RTI was diluted. Third is the model of governance. The model of governance, it is not it's a primitive era where the entire process was non-participative. Now the model of governance has to be participative. Like in seen case of TRAI, when brought up regulation and it was saving the net neutrality, it was favoring the net neutrality. At that point of a time, a protest was seen in India called Save the Internet. You know the famous speeches given by the AIB, and the protests were seen all over the world. Now, because of which the regulations were changed by the TRAI in order to make internet more free and fair. Now, this is an example of pre-legislative consultative policy which should be promoted in India. Now, if this is being required and law and actually a regulation is being passed in 2014, then what is the current state? Are we actually implementing it? There is a current sad state of affair if we see in there. First of all, since 2014, 301 pieces of legislation has been passed, of which only 227 were put into public domain, which is really poor shape. And of the 74 which were put in public domain, only 40 were placed in within 30 days guideline. So hardly only 13 law actually saw the public domain in a stipulated time period. So this is a bigger problem. The next is, you see in the even in the 16th and 17th Lok Sabha, the status is not good, because in 16th Lok Sabha 186 pieces of legislation were passed. Only 142 saw at they went to the public, which was actually considered can be considered good. And of 44, sorry, on 142 were not given to the public, and of 44 which actually went to the public domain, only 24 passed the 30-day guideline. Overall, article says the biggest problem is procedural as well as legal, because procedurally what is being mandated is not being followed, and legally this piece of regulation does not have a legal or statutory backing, and without legal and statutory backing, government is not going to follow it. And thus actually editorial gives a suggestion as well. In the suggestion, it says make changes on two fronts, at the procedural level and at the legal level. First, it says that give it a legal backing, give it a constitutional backing, so that it is actually mandated by the law that this should be done by the MPs. Now, along with that, it says make the changes in the parliamentary procedure, in Lok Sabha, Raj Sabha, even in cabinet, so that it become mandatory for them to introduce any draft law in the public domain first before introducing into the parliament. So it is saying make it mandatory, legally as well as procedurally, so that the MPs or the minister have to introduce a draft law in the public domain before it is being introduced in the parliament. And it says minister has to be it should be compulsory for ministry to add a note at the end of the draft law before it is being introduced in the parliament. Now for that, it is a very revolutionary idea which need to be introduced by heart, by spirit, not just letter. I hope this video was useful to you. You got something from this. If that is the case, then you need to like and subscribe the video. If not, then put your doubts in the comment section. Thank you so much.
Current Affairs by ForumIAS is an all-in-one program that covers the dynamic aspect of the syllabus from both prelims and mains perspective. Last year, we have helped more than 100 students crack IAS with our current affairs classes.